Spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. We're back. We were going 5 days a week during the regular NFL season, right up until the Super Bowl. We took a little break. We introduced the Legit Football NFL podcast. We're bringing 30 minutes back. We're going to do it once a week. Going to stick to 30 minutes. If you're listening to this for the first time or watching this for the first time, we've got a lot of followers since we did 30 minutes during the season that have been added. We don't have a script for this. There's no topics. We're just going to wing it. It's me today. I've got my producer, Anthony Wayner, behind the scenes. We'll have Kevin joining us some Wednesdays. We'll have other guests. It's just meant to be 30 minutes of pure football talk. Who knows what direction it's going to go in. If we have people in the chat, they're welcome to ask questions. We could have one topic from a single question that takes the whole 30 minutes. We could pivot to multiple questions. But let's go ahead and get it started. I don't even know what direction we're going to go in. We're just going to talk about some football for half an hour. It's that simple. Anthony's going to go ahead and put up the timer. That's how we're going to do it. You'll know when I have to stop talking. And feel free, if you guys are in the chat, to throw me some questions because, like I said, we don't have anything prepared. We're just going to talk football for 30 minutes. As soon as I see that timer ready, Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and say 30 minutes of football with Legit Football. We're back edition starts now. So, I mean, the big thing is the draft right now. Armand, nice to see you in the chat, as always. Doesn't matter which show it is. Armand's in the chat. Armand, feel free to throw some questions my way. 30 minutes of football, Armand, I know is new to you. We just talk football for half an hour. It can be any topic. It'll be questions. It could be fantasy football. It could be NFL related. It could be just one team. It could be topical news, whatever. I know what's on my mind is fantasy drafts, dynasty drafts in particular. I have a couple that are coming up. We had the actual NFL draft at the end of April. You've had rookie mini camps are now done. We can talk about Anthony Richardson is looking good. Like, how much of that is smoke and how much of it is actual legitimate news to be determined. But it looks like reports coming out of Colts minicamp is that Anthony Richardson is quote, not as raw as maybe some in the NFL thought he might be. Dalton Kincaid, good notes coming out of Buffalo. Apparently Josh Allen was pressing hard to get a pass catcher of his caliber. Lions camp, here you go, Anthony. Sam Laporta, tight end from Iowa. And this is rookies. It's all rookies, so keep in mind, like, the higher-rated guys should go first. But reports that Laporta did well. All right, Armand, going to throw a question out here. I love it. Who would you take number one overall in fantasy and PPR and non-PPR drafts? Armand, are we talking redraft or are we talking dynasty? That actually might be the same answer. It might be the same person in dynasty and redraft, but I'm curious to see which way you want. I mean, if we're talking dynasty, it's Bijan. I know there's some talk about Anthony Richardson if it's a super flex league. I don't hate that. I have the 101 in a dynasty draft. I have every intention of going Bijan unless I get some sort of insane trade offer. I traded into 101 specifically to go after Bijan. All right, Armand wants to know about redraft. So once again, who would you take number one overall in fantasy in PPR and non-PPR draft for redraft? Oh, look at that. We got Mr. Philip Fox hanging out in the chat. Always nice to see you, Kevin, whether you're next to me on the screen or in the chat. All right, so let's address Armand's question. Number one overall in fantasy in PPR and non-PPR drafts. There is a real consideration about taking Bijan Robinson, number one overall, in both of those. But certainly in PPR, he is a weapon. And that's one of the things that he said when he was doing interviews, and the Falcons have said since they drafted him, and we've seen reports come out of camp that they are using him out wide as a wide receiver. They're using him out of the backfield. They're going to utilize him every way they can. They didn't need a running back, Atlanta. That was certainly not one of their needs. They had Tyler Algier break their rookie yardage record, previously held by Julio Jones. But you get a playmaker like Bijan, you go. And so when you have an offense like Atlanta that's going to run the ball that much, that wants to run the ball that much, they were number 1 or number 2 in run percentage per games last season. And then you add on a generational talent like Bijan, he is going to get a crazy amount of opportunities, whether it's PPR and non-PPR. I know he's a rookie. He's never played a single down in the NFL. But if you're thinking about some of the other guys who would be up there, last year's number 1 producer, Austin Eckler. All right, he's getting closer to 30 years old. He requested a trade. They didn't let him out. Is LA now cognizant of the fact that Eckler wants out? And as a result, are they going to give him the ball a little less? Are they looking to develop some of their other running backs? So I'm a little iffy taking Eckler there. Christian McCaffrey is certainly a consideration as well. We saw how good he could be in that Shanahan offense in San Francisco. However, they don't want to run him into the ground. They're very aware of too much usage and giving him too many carries. We saw Elijah Mitchell come in and spell him a number of times last year before he got hurt. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't know. I might think about going Bijan. PPR, you can talk about like maybe Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver. There's not a lot of wide receivers that go number 1 overall. And you talk about positional scarcity. Justin Jefferson's incredible, but there is such a small level of, there's almost a handful of actual bell cow running backs who are going to get that much usage. So the drop off between the top few running backs and the second tier is huge. So getting a guy like Bijan or CMC or maybe even Eckler, if you believe that he can score 20 touchdowns for 3 years in a row, that would make sense. Kevin says JA17 no matter what. I know you're a Bills fan, Kevin, but I should hope that you are not taking Josh Allen number 1 overall in a redraft league. But hey, to each their own. So if I'm pressed to it in a redraft without any additional context. We haven't seen training camps right now. Armand, I actually think I'm leaning Bijan number 1 overall. Good question though. Anthony, by the way, you're also welcome to ask me questions. Most shows we'll have somebody else. Oh, here we go. He had a question ready. He hadn't even barely had to queue him up for that. Who do you think will be a first round bust? I think at least one, if not more, of the wide receivers, just because of how unheralded this wide receiver class was. There's just a very, very good chance that most of them won't pan out. When the first wide receiver doesn't go until 20, Jackson Smith and Jigba to Seattle, and there was a run on receivers, there's a good chance that one, if not 2 of those guys is going to actually bust out. If I had to pick one, I'm a little iffy on Quentin Johnston from TCU, who went to the Chargers. That's a very good landing spot for him. What I'm not high on him is that he's a big wide receiver, but he plays small ball. He's actually really good after the catch, but not as good, at least not in college, at 50-50 balls. And to me, that shows a little bit of lack of tenacity, a lack of grit. It doesn't always translate that way, but with the information I have, I was not too high on him. But he landed in a great spot. If Keenan Allen or Mike Williams gets injured, which they're both prone to do, there's going to be even more opportunities. Even if they don't, he'll be able to see some wide open looks because those other guys will be drawing away the coverage. So he's got a good opportunity. He landed in a great spot with Justin Herbert as his quarterback. But yeah, if I'm having to pick up somebody from that wide receiver class, is going to be a bust. Probably multiple wide receivers. We've had such good wide receiver classes lately. Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Justin Jefferson. If you think about some of these second rounders that have done well, like A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, and this wide receiver class is just nobody's idea of special. There'll probably be some late rounders that hit and some of those first rounders that bust. Let's do a defensive player. who I think will bust in the first round. Let's see, who do we think was a bit of a reach? I mean, Tyree Wilson is probably the obvious bet, just because he's so high risk, high reward.
Wow. Okay.
Look at that. Kevin's on podcast even when he's not on the podcast. I hope he's still in the chat, and he had a surreal moment hearing himself. Well, Tyree Wilson, you're banking on physical traits. Just like Javon Walker last year for the Jaguars at 1, is if he doesn't hit that, if they're not able to develop him, and you're just going on raw potential, like just being athletically gifted doesn't mean you're able to actually play the position. So, and as bad as that Raiders defense has been, I'm a little worried about them actually developing him. So yeah, Tyree Wilson would be my guess for defensive bust. Do we have other questions lined up? Armand, feel free to throw one out, or if Anthony, I don't know if you have some in the queue, in the chamber. This is what happens when we do no script. We just talk. And when I go solo, I'm just chatting here, trying to figure out how to fill the time. We are doing a legit football startup dynasty draft. Still have a few spots to fill. Armand, you know what? We'll send you, if you're interested, as our number one fan who's always in these chats, let us know if you're interested in joining our legit football startup dynasty draft. We have about 9 or 10 people right now, all people that are associated with legit football. So obviously Anthony, Jimmy Ray, Adrian, all the way from Australia, Kevin, of course, myself. So we got a few more spots to fill, but I have 101 in one of my leagues, and yeah, I agree. Kevin says we need Armand in the league. 101 in one of my leagues, and 103 in the other. So let's talk about the 103. Hopefully people from my league aren't, I'm not tipping my hat too much. Although this league, I've been very clear about what I'm doing. If he's available, will be taking Anthony Richardson. Oh, there we go. We got a question in the chat. Carlton McDaniel, which NFL game are you looking forward to? It's gonna sound like a cop-out. I mean, there's lots of games that I'm excited about, but I want to see how good the Lions are. And I know it's the first game of the year, but the fact that the Lions are playing... Yeah, there you go. Anthony, our Lions fan, I'm assuming that's a good noise, Anthony. I don't know if that's something you agree with, or if that's an alarm. You're worried. But I think that's going to be a good barometer. I don't expect them to win, but if they play them tough, if that offense is able to continue the momentum that it had at the end of last season, where they ended up knocking the Packers off, being one of the top 10 teams in the NFL to finish the season, even though they missed the playoffs, if they can come out, show that continuation, get a guy, let's see what they have in Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Let's see if, I know it's first game in rookie tight ends and all. Let's see what Sam Laporta looks in, because he's going to get some looks very early. They don't really have much in the way of tight end. Let's see what that new look defense looks like against Patrick Mahomes, with all the additions they made, both in free agency and in the draft. That's what I'm excited right off the bat, is to see what the Lions look like. The Chiefs will be good. Not worried about that. Otherwise, Niners-Eagles is Week 13 in Philadelphia. So, NFC Championship rematch. Purdy gets injured early. We know the story. They were down to Christian McCaffrey. I don't know that deserves a laugh track, Anthony. Poor Purdy. I'm a believer in Purdy. I think that he'll be the primary starter for the majority of that season. But you know that I know Niners fans, and I'm sure the Niners team themselves I've already circled this on the calendar, as they never felt like they had a shot. When they were down past their third string quarterback to their running back who had to play quarterback, like it was done. It was all but done. And I think they want a chance to show what they can do against the best team in the NFC from last year, Philadelphia, with a full roster. Hopefully they're fully healthy at that point. Brock Purdy should be good to go at that point, and we'll have 12 weeks prior to that to ramp up. So I would say NFC Championship rematch. And there's always the usuals, like Bengals Chiefs playing late in the year. As always, that's going to be good. Mahomes Burrow is the new Manning Brady rivalry. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Carlton. Awesome question. Coming from LinkedIn. We just recently started broadcasting live to LinkedIn. We usually just do it on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So Carlton, appreciate you tuning in live on LinkedIn. Armand unfortunately said that he is retired from season-long fantasy football, and 2 reasons are injury and drama. Fair enough. Yeah. You change your mind, Armand, you let us know. We got a few spots left. But yeah, on the 103, if you are doing Dynasty and you have... I thought for sure 103, that's Anthony Richardson all day long. Before he went to the Colts, I was going to target Anthony Richardson. I'm all about the ceiling that he offers. I think the reports of how raw he is were a little bit overblown. I know that he doesn't have a lot of experience. The accuracy is a concern, but we saw that exact same thing with Josh Allen. I mean, I know that is almost like a lazy comparison, but Allen had like a 55% completion rate at Wyoming, and look what he's been able to do. Obviously, Kevin will agree in the chat. So the ceiling is incredible, right? What he can do, and then he gets in Indianapolis with Shane Steichen. I can't wait to see, and I do think he'll be starting week 1. But now it's like the cat's out of the bag. I'm not sure he's going to fall to 103. So if that's the case, and this is a team, I should say my 103 team is Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. So I don't need a quarterback. Do I take Bryce Young? Let's say Bijan goes 1, AR goes 2. But I think Bryce Young could be fantastic. If he does stay healthy, if that frame holds up, we're already hearing that he's got full command of the huddle right from the start. And yes, I know it's rookie camp, but we don't want to overreact. We don't want to go too far, sure. But the ceiling there is also very high. The only question with him is his size. If the size ends up not being a concern, he has very, very high potential. So once again, if you're new to 30 Minutes of Football, because we're bringing it back after, I guess, a 3-month hiatus, we take halftime. We got 2 15-minute halves. Normally, if we have a sponsor, we would do an ad read here. We just brought the show back, so we don't have an ad sponsor. If we have a guest on, we'll let them plug whatever it is that they want to plug. But right now, it's just me talking and explaining the show. Once again, we'll be doing this once a week to start, every Wednesday at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. I got nothing else to talk about for halftime, Anthony. Let's go ahead and roll it into the second half. We'll keep talking about the 103 position in Dynasty. So once again, Bijan's gone. We'll assume Anthony Richardson's is gone. And if they go for Bryce, I've seen Jahmyr Gibbs creeping up. Anthony, I'm sure that makes you excited. I believe you traded out of 101, Anthony, in one of your drafts back to 103. Maybe you end up getting Gibbs in that situation. But let's say for this scenario, yeah, I think that's what you're hoping at this point. When I have Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, as great as Bryce Young could be, I don't know that he's going to be... I mean, what are the odds he's going to be drastically better than those two guys? So at that point, I have a pretty strong roster top to bottom. At this point, I just had some injury luck last year, which is why I ended up with 103. I'm probably just going to trade out, and I'm probably going to look to trade out into the 2024 draft if I can. If I can find somebody who does want Bryce Young, some quarterback-needy team, or who wants Jahmyr Gibbs. Because I do think, especially at that draft capital, that Detroit is going to feed Gibbs the ball. Right? They're going to want to use and get value for the capital that they gave in to draft him at 12. When some people were wondering whether he was even going to slide into the first round, they didn't draft him there just to put him in a timeshare with Montgomery. Montgomery's going to spell him, maybe do some goal line work. This is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs' time. So we got guys who may want to trade up for Gibbs if they see that potential there, especially in PPR. Right? You're going to get a lot of play out of the backfield. They traded away their PPR guy before, DeAndre Swift, who, by the way, started last season really, really well. He's one of the top running backs after week 1, and then he had some injury issues. Or you get Bryce Young running that Frank Reich Panthers offense, who could very well be a phenomenal top 5 quarterback. He has that kind of ceiling as long as I'm not worried about the height, as long as the frame, as long as he doesn't get squashed by these 300-pound linemen. I'm going to want to trade out of there. This is not a very deep draft at all. In general, yes, it's great for tight ends, but unless you want to get Dalton Kincaid, I think there's some tight ends you can get in the 3rd and 4th round. Wide receiver class isn't great. There could be somebody hitting who's a 3rd or 4th round rookie draft, fantasy guy. So I would rather try to trade up into the early part of next year because, and I know they always say this, but think about this. You've got Drake May, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers. I mean, those are all like what you call generational, and it's 4 of them. You've got Caleb Williams is the next great quarterback prospect, and Drake May, by all accounts, both of them would have been ahead of this entire rookie class of quarterbacks. Marvin Harrison Jr. is, from what I can tell, about as slam dunk as it gets for wide receivers, and will probably go number 3 overall, or number 2 overall if whoever's at number 2 doesn't need a quarterback. And then Brock Bowers, who was, as a freshman, the guy everybody's like, I can't wait till he comes to the NFL. He's going to be the next great tight end out of Georgia. Darnell Washington played behind him. That's why Washington didn't have great stats, because he was playing behind Bowers. Those are just the top 4. So if I'm at 103 and Anthony Richardson doesn't fall, and I don't need a quarterback, which I don't in this league, and as nice as Jahmyr Gibbs could be, I would rather try to get into the top 4 of next year and just try to get one of these bona fide studs. And look, I'm in a privileged position at 103 because I got there out of injury. It's not that my team was bad. I actually have a really, really good team. So that's where I'm thinking on that. Here's my pivot. And by the way, Anthony, and people in the chat, if you have questions, feel free. There we go. Will Lamar Jackson be worth the money? He has the ability to be worth the money. I think they should have paid him before. I think this should not have dragged out. They could have paid him prior to last season. We wouldn't even be in this situation. He's an MVP. You can say what you want about his play style, running quarterback, but he literally at one point was the best player in the NFL for a season. He is the reason they have been as successful as they have on offense. He has the ability to be one of the most electric quarterbacks in the NFL. You pay a guy like that. He didn't get injured because he was running. He didn't. The injuries he's had, he actually suffered them in the pocket. So that whole running quarterback more likely to get injured. Lamar is one of the best ever to play quarterback when it comes to avoiding hits. If you actually watch how he runs, he's very, very good at finding the sideline. He slides when he needs to. He's very shifty. He doesn't take a lot of direct hits. Simply running the ball more often will get you injured, sure, but that's not my concern if I'm on the Ravens staff or if I'm a Ravens fan. It's going to be hard to judge because the AFC is so stacked. It is so competitive. You've got Joe Burrow in your division. If Deshaun Watson actually becomes what he used to be, the Browns actually have a really, really good roster. Sneaky, one of the better rosters in the AFC. And then you've got Mike Tomlin at the bottom, who, by the way, has never had a losing record, ever, as a head coach. And that team's only going to get better with all the rookies they had. Pickett and Pickens both going into year 2. And then I loved the draft. One of the best drafts the Steelers had. I think Kevin had them as the number 1 draft winner. So that's a long way of saying that he's worth the money. You already have to pay him. Is he going to bring a Super Bowl? It's very hard to tell. Because no matter how good your team is, look, I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm very excited for this year. If Tua can stay healthy, the Dolphins have the ability to be one of the top teams in the AFC. But even at their best, they still have to beat Joe Burrow. They still have to beat Patrick Mahomes. They still have to beat Josh Allen in their own division. They now have to beat Aaron Rodgers. So it's just such an open-ended question. And I don't think that Ravens fans or NFL fans should judge the contract that Jackson got simply on whether he wins a Super Bowl or not. If he was in the NFC, okay, maybe that's a different question. So will he be worth the money? I'm going to rephrase it as he was already worth the money. He earned that money. I'm glad they paid him. I don't know what these sound effects mean, Anthony. I'm guessing that's a good thing. Rocket ships. I nailed it out of the park. I'm going to go with that. What does the return of Marvin Jones Jr. mean? This is a Lions homer question, guys. This is our producer Anthony, diehard Lions fan, wanting to add a Lions question in there, meaning I don't think it has a lot of relevance. It's nice, I will say, that with Jameson Williams out for the first 6 games, that they have at least a proven steady receiver. He doesn't have the same skill set, much different skill set than Williams, sure, but having a guy you can rely on. Chark is out of there. You still have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot. They may not be as good vertically for those first 6 games, but at least Goff has got a guy that, okay, this is a guy who I know I can rely on to make a few catches a game, be a good possession receiver. So what does the return of it mean? It just means that they won't hurt as much with the absence of Jameson Williams, who, as a reminder, is suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season, or the first 6 games, due to betting on non-football, or at least non-NFL, while on an NFL facility at the Lions practice facility or at their lounge or something like that. So I don't know if that question satisfies you, Anthony, but yeah, it doesn't mean much. It's not awful. He gets to come back to Detroit at a time when Detroit is peaking. It was good timing because Jameson Williams got suspended, but I don't think he moves the needle a lot. So feel free to. I'm going to go on my next thought, but feel free to pop questions in either in the chat or Anthony. I don't know if enough has been talked about the way of what Arizona is doing right now. Now, this is the team who has been one of the worst run. They're not even in your division. Why are you booing the Cardinals? I have been one of the harshest critics of Arizona and how they've run their organization over the past few years. I was never a fan of Kingsbury. I was very vocal about that. I thought that he was on the hot seat even after they extended him. We put it out in our Legit Football newsletter and on Twitter in August last year. We got a lot of heat from Cardinals fans saying they just paid him, they just extended him. Look where we're at today. Now, I'm not a big fan of Jonathan Gannon, but Ossie Montefort, the new GM for Arizona, I really like that they have a plan now. What they were able to do, especially setting up, we already talked about the 2024 draft, guys. They set up to possibly have the top 2 picks in 2024 by making that trade with Houston and still managing to trade back up with your Lions, Anthony, and get the tackle, Paris Johnson Jr., that apparently they wanted all along anyway. But the fact that they are already going to be probably the worst roster in the NFL, right in line to get the number 1 overall pick, but they traded with Houston, who has been one of the worst teams in the NFL over the past few seasons. A little bit of hope with C.J. Stroud, but he's still a rookie, right? Rookie head coach, rookie offensive coordinator. Ben Slowick has never been an offensive coordinator before, and a team that has some building pieces, but by no means superstars. So very well could finish top 5 in the draft, or maybe even as high as top 2. By the way, they also got an extra second this year. They got an extra third next year. They have like 5 or 6 picks in like the top 70. So Arizona, they've basically said, look, Kyler's going to be out the first half this year. If I'm them, I'm even questioning whether I bring Kyler back at all, because if he's not going to be ready until October or November, by that point, presumably you're well out of any type of playoff race. Do you bring him back just to risk further injury? If you're Kyler or his camp, do you risk coming back to a lost season? That's something to monitor. But I like that Arizona has a plan. Right? So I like that they have, okay, look, 2023, like it's good. The Titans should be doing this. 2023, that's done. We know we can't compete. We've got the Niners in our division. We got the Seahawks, both of the playoff teams. And our quarterback, who we paid a large contract to, is at best case scenario out until week 4 or week 5, and he's coming off an ACL, which means even if he does come back and is able to start, he's not going to be as mobile. It always takes longer to get to full use out of a torn ACL. So one of the strengths of Kyler Murray will be not be able to utilize to its full potential. So it's a lost season. Let's go all out for 2024. Let's stack in what should be on paper a much better draft, and let's just go all in 2024 to really build our team fast. I love that as a strategy. I think more teams should do it. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. If you're a Cardinals fan, look to the future. It's going to be rough this season, sure. But I think you're set up really nice for 2024. All right, that's the end of my Cardinals rant. There we go. Can Sean Payton turn the Broncos around? Can he? Yes. Will he with Russell Wilson? That is the biggest question. I've said this before on 30 Minutes and on the Legit Football podcast, but this team really was a quarterback away from being one of the better AFC teams 2 seasons ago when they had Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, and they had a healthy Cortland Sutton and a rising Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant at the time, a very athletic, promising tight end, maybe top 15 offensive line, that's all you need. They had Von Miller still. They had Bradley Chubb. They drafted Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons in the secondary. They just had so many pieces. They had lots of weapons. KJ Hamler. They had a great defense. They just needed quarterback play. They brought in Russell. Oh, perfect. Future Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winner. Almost a 2-time Super Bowl winner if they actually handed the ball to Marshawn Lynch against the Patriots. It's going to work. But it didn't. And yes, we can say part of it is Nathaniel Hackett, but Russell he didn't just look like he was off a little bit. He looked like he was done, right? Everything about his game just didn't look like the Russell Wilson that we had seen for so many years in Seattle. Is that something Payton can fix? Is there something that's reversible? Some quarterbacks, especially mobile quarterbacks, they just go over that cliff a little bit sooner. Did Russell Wilson already go over that cliff? In which case, I think Payton will set up an offensive scheme that certainly makes them better than last year. They will be better than last year. But we talked earlier about Lamar and the Ravens in a tough AFC. You're in the same division as Patrick Mahomes. You're in the same division as Justin Herbert. And you have all those other quarterbacks, Burrow, Allen, Dolphins, Rodgers, Lamar. You've got so much competition. Even if the Broncos are better, which they will be, they have to be under Sean Payton versus Nathaniel Hackett. Can you turn them around completely? That's a tall task. It's going to be fun to watch. Some really, really good teams in the AFC are not going to make the playoffs. Some teams that made the playoffs last year, maybe the Ravens, are not going to make the playoffs. Maybe the Dolphins if Tua gets hurt. Or if it's just such a tough AFC East, they might not make the playoffs. So the Broncos can have a solid season with Sean Payton, and it look much more positive than it did last year under Nathaniel Hackett, and they'll still have a losing record and miss out on the playoffs. Can Sean Payton turn around the Broncos? Absolutely. Will he? That all depends on Broncos Country, Let's Ride, and the rest of the AFC. I did it. I talked for 30 minutes by myself about the NFL. We will not be doing this by myself every week. We will have other people joining me, starting with Kevin Phillip Fox next week. If you like the format, we cut it off at 30 minutes. We keep it short and sweet. During the season, one of our most popular episodes was fantasy start-sit questions. So bring your fantasy questions. We'll make sure to go live. We're going to start going live on Instagram and TikTok prior to this show. Drum up some interest, let you know we're going to be answering your questions. Thank you, Anthony, for throwing in some questions to keep me talking. Always great job behind the scene. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Armand Carlton over on LinkedIn. My partner in prime, Kevin Phillip Fox, in the chat. For 30 minutes of football with Legit Football, this is Brian McFadden. Make sure to check out Legit Football NFL Podcast on Friday and Monday. I'll be back on this show next Wednesday. We'll see you then. That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.